Hi everyone, this is Joseph. Thank you for coming to today's show. We have TikTok here and we have YouTube here and IG.
The key news today is about how the United States is canceling so many student visas. There's so many important aspects to this that we really want to discuss because it affects people's jobs, not just the international students' jobs. It affects tuition. If you have a kid trying to go to college, it might affect the future state of their college tuition as well as whether or not the university still even exists. Right? So we're going to talk about international students and its effect to the United States. Then we're going to talk about a success story. We're live filming a success story, and today's success story is about 601 waiver while having an arrest record, right? And so we got a request for evidence, we responded to it, it got approved, that's where we're filming the success story. And so those are both really interesting things that we want to go over today. And if anybody has any questions regarding what we're talking about today or about anything immigration related, I'll do the best of my ability to help answer all those questions. What we typically do is we'll do the news segment, and then afterwards I'll answer frequently asked questions, or I'll answer any of your questions. Then afterwards, I'll do the success story, and then after the success story, we will have, again, I'll save maybe 10 minutes or so answering anybody's questions as well. So let's start. All right, the news for today is that the State Department is potentially canceling a lot of visas. Now, it's not directly canceling, they're just doing social media marketing, social media vetting, but it is definitely true that the United States government, USCIS, CBP, the consulate, and the White House, they're going after international students, right? We've seen this news for the past 3 months. We're probably going to continue to see it in the next few years. And they're just going after international students in so many different ways. Specifically, they're going after Harvard, canceling their potential ability to recruit international students. But it will eventually potentially spread throughout all the universities. Right now, the big news is that consulates, in reviewing an international student application, whether or not they can get the visa to go to the school after already being accepted by the school, after already paying a portion for the application fee, they're reviewing their social media background to decide whether or not they can get the visa. The State Department has almost full jurisdiction to review these issues. If a visa is denied, you cannot challenge them in court, right? There's a whole thing about consular removal processing. In the United States, you do not have the authority to challenge them in court. You can totally look into that. There's a whole nonprofit that AILA is working with as well, talking about SoCal AILA, working with, trying to challenge that entire notion, whether or not U.S. courts can challenge a consular's non-reviewability, but that's beyond this topic. But if consulates and embassies around the world can directly stop visa issuance abroad for a social media post, they don't get the visa, they don't get to come to the US, and it's really hard to challenge them. Here, we want to talk about, is this good or bad? Is it good or bad? What benefits do international students have for United States? And should we not allow them to come in the first place? Now, of course, statistics are going to go both ways. And in my opinion on this matter, it might be due to AI, actually. It might be due to how the entire fabric of society, how we have become in the United States one of the greatest nations in the planet throughout history, and how things are changing, right? So first, allow me to go through some of the key data points on how much international students benefit the US. But that might not prove that they are continuously needed, and that's up to really the government to decide that and the elected officials to decide that, and I would love to hear your comments on it, right? But first, allow me to set the premise on all the benefits that international students bring to the United States. But we will talk about AI because, again, we have to face that, right? As a country, as a humanity, right? We have to face that. So first, talk about international students. Last year, international students, record high, over 1 million international students came into the country. Almost 1 out of 20 students in the United States is an international student. We saw statistics from Harvard, about 30% or more international students fill the campus. We're not going to go into the vetting process to get an F-1 visa. Just suffice it to say it is more strenuous and more difficult than most people realize. It is, they vet their finances, their ability, their home ties. They go through everything to make sure that they're going to fit in the United States before they can even come. Over 40% of all master's students, PhD students, graduate schools are filled by international students. The GDP, right, the amount of money that international students bring to the United States, over $43 billion. To put that figure in perspective, that is more than the entire GDP of Iceland, of Cambodia, and other countries. So the value as far as economic spending that it generates for the United States, housing, tuition, cost, and then when they intern, when they work, when the research that they create, right? If 40% of graduate schools are filled by international students, all the papers that they publish, how do you rank universities? Is a university good or not? A lot of it depends on how many publications come out, how good are they pushing the forefront of a human intellect, right? So for the past 100 years, international students have flooded into our country, have helped all these different universities excel, produce all these papers, and I mean, if you just research the top 100 best universities, undergrad, graduate school, in different fields, how many of them are in the United States? Now, the second question for you is, if the international students were cut in half, do you think they would still be up there? Maybe today, it might still be able to be leading institutions, but 50 years ago, 100 years ago, you have to grant the argument that without international students, the current universities that are leading the world, all in the United States, they would not be there without international students. That you have to grant that argument, okay? The best minds for the past 50 years, they come here to study undergrad, they come here to study graduate school, they lead crazy research, they pump out good papers, and it helped these universities not just produce great research so that they become top universities leading in the world, but also the tuition they pay created this huge endowment fund, right? And then they further donate to the institutions, so that now further the second generation, the third generation of people want to go to the best schools. And so all these elites, prince and princesses from all the different nations, they want to come to the United States to study. They pay the high tuition, they pay the security guards, they pay for the living standards here in the United States, so that these institutions can get even better. Okay, so again, that is almost without a dispute. You also see on the headlines the crimes that they create, right? They're supposed to be here to study. They're not supposed to be here to work. Yes, if they're working, their visas get terminated. But a lot of times what we're seeing, on the news at least, is that they might be a spy. They might be rioting, they might be protesting, they're supposed to be learning. According to the FBI, I'm reading, from 2019 to 2023, there's fewer than 10 international students who are criminally charged with espionage, right? Again, the numbers just don't really add up. Now, this might be a straw man, right? I'm not saying there's no bad actors. Of course, there's bad apples everywhere. But what I think is really going on, again, this is just two and two being put together. Artificial intelligence is completely transforming the fabric of society. We are closely monitoring it. We deal with it every single day, right? We're constantly seeing it on the news. In 5 years from now, 10 years from now, most of the jobs that we have today will be completely different, if non-existent entirely. We're talking about doctors, lawyers, we're talking about engineers, we're probably first year associate jobs. A lot of it is research and writing. A lot of times AI will be able to do a lot of that. So if this is going to happen, is the United States stopping international students from coming in, helping secure job availability for Americans 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right? But I'm just seeing that trend. 1 million international students come into the country. How many of them are able to stay in the country for OPT? How many of them, basically a work training program for a year, and if it's a STEM major for 3 years? How many of them are able to continue to stay, and how many of them would get married to US citizens and get eventually green cards, or how many of them are able to come in and work and get job sponsorship? If AI is going to transform the fabric of society and there's going to be fewer jobs in the short term, maybe what the United States is really doing by cutting out international students is simply just to protect jobs. I don't know. Nobody has said this, but again, we're just putting the two together. Because what they're saying doesn't make sense, right? They're trying to cut out spies. FBI already did the report. You're going to cut out so many international students. Right now, it is May, June, and July, the crazy busiest time of international students around the world. Why? Because everybody graduated high school, everybody's putting in their application, they got accepted to so many universities around the world. Should they go to Cambridge or Harvard? Should they go to Oxford or should they go to MIT? They're deciding. They got offers from both. They're going to interviews at different consulates. And now, if the US consulate is saying, oh, sorry, we have to review your social media post. Well, then, if they cannot secure the visa, they still have to get dormed, they still have to get security guards. There's so many things that they still have to do. If they cannot decide in May or June, they're going to a different university. They're going to the university in their home country because it's so much better, so much cheaper. Why spend a fortune? Why spend $300,000 to go to a US Ivy League institution and pay for the crazy high international student costs, pay for everything when they could just go to their home country? It is also a really good school. A little bit lower rank worldwide terms, but still extremely prestigious. So that is the question facing America today. Is international students welcomed or not welcomed? And you want to really analyze that in the big picture. In the past 50 years, you have to grant the fact that the United States would not be where it is today if it wasn't for international students. They boost the U.S. university ranking with the publications they make. They subsidize so much of the tuition and the cost of expansion of these universities, so to the point where they have these huge endowment funds. And maybe at this point, the United States is taking a step back and say, you know what? We already have the best universities. We don't need that many. And so it's okay, we sacrifice a little bit of these universities. They could just live off of their endowment. The federal government, we're not gonna continue to give you funding for research. You're not gonna get the international students. You have to use up your own endowment. We're gonna lower down your power, but we're gonna shrink our deficit. We're gonna spend the money elsewhere, right? It's time for United States of America to invest in something else other than our universities because they're already so good. And because AI is aggressively transforming the landscape, we do not need more knowledge because AI does it better. We don't need more research paper because AI will do it better. We don't need more people to stay in the US to do it better because we will have robotics. So we're gonna invest in things that international students can't do, such as we need more trade schools. Maybe that is the argument and that's the underlying trajectory of the United States. So any argument talking about is international students actually good for the country or not good for the country, just looking at past data might not actually work, you know? But I think anytime you want to have a real discussion to think about this, you really need to have all the facts in play. International students did significantly help the United States. The United States universities are extremely good because of what they contributed. And if they don't come, it will significantly harm a lot of these college towns. It will harm the universities. It will deplete their funds. But is that good or is that bad? You want to look at it in a bigger picture. What is not true and what people should not say is that international students have harmed the United States. It is not true that the international students are largely spies, espionage, protesting, doing things that they're not supposed to do. That is largely untrue because of the vetting process. You really have to understand how the system works, right? We've applied so many visas for international students, and after they graduate, the vetting process to get an OPT to be able to work at a company, and then afterwards to be able to get H1B sponsor. It is extremely difficult, and the selection process is extremely difficult on the company's front and as well as on the government's front, right? You go from a student, 18 to 21, 22 years old, OPT for 1 year, graduate school for 2 years, 3 years, H1B for 3 years, perm application, 2 years, 3 years. You are a foreigner in this country. You're working your butt off to be the best of the best. You don't get a green card application even submitted until potentially 10 years in. And during this entire time, you are paying more tuition than everybody. You're living here with constant fear. You're working overtime. You're doing so many things to prove yourself. And that's what the United States have enjoyed for the past half a century. So my question is, if we're going to move away from it, how? Now, again, it might be more smoke than fire. 1 million international students coming to the country, maybe too much, maybe only 800,000, maybe only 700,000, maybe 600,000, right? Sure, right? But any discussion surrounding international students and its effect on the United States really needs to have these numbers in mind. Yes, the past year, there is a record amount of people who applied, right? Because throughout the COVID, a lot of times people get laid off, they don't have jobs, they want to go to a place where I mean, that happens in the United States too, right? Right, I graduated college, that was during the housing collapse. No jobs everywhere, everybody had to go to grad school. As millennials, we've gone through this cycle, but this COVID thing affected the whole world, right? And so because of the lack of job opportunity around the world, so people apply to go graduate school here. And there was a record number past year. But you cannot just say, oh, there's a record number this year, so let's just cancel all student visas, right? That's unreasonable. And nobody is saying that. But there have been many efforts that have been done in the past couple months that we're seeing that that's where the trajectory is going, right? With the complete cancellation of visas of students who are here in the United States with just having minor arrest records. That's stopping, trying to kick out people who are here. Then, now doing additional screening right at the craziest, busiest time, issuing visas abroad. These decisions don't just happen overnight. A lot of these discussions have been in the works planning for months before they're issued. So who knows what's coming in June, July, August, right? What's coming next year? So for the public and anybody who's really thinking through the whole student visa situation, people who are international students, whether they're before coming to the US, people who are still studying here, people who are graduating on OPT, people who are applying for H1B, this hits home, right? And anybody who's working in college towns, anybody who's working with international students, this is stuff that people really need to think about. Is this good for the United States? And if it's not, what should we do, right? Is this path that we're going down good or not good? What role does international students play in the United States economy now and in the future, given AI, given all the other things that we're seeing? So anyways, I just want to report that as a news, right? The whole goal of this news segment is to talk about things that most public doesn't hear about, see, or I think is misinformed. I'll take questions now, and then before we get into the success story.
Hi, can I travel outside of the US right now as an international student? Or can I just travel inside the US?
If you're traveling within the US, you don't see customs, generally speaking. So anything I say, I have to caveat that, right? Because this administration, there's so many things crazy. But when you're traveling within the United States, between airports, right? Say if you're going from Denver to New York to California, there's no custom officer that's inspecting your work, your papers. So yes, you can travel, provided you have a real ID, you could get on the plane. If you travel internationally and you're coming back to the US, then you're gonna see a customs officer who's gonna inspect whether or not you can be here. They're gonna look at a lot of things. They're admitting you to come in. And so if they don't think you can be admitted, you're not admittable and you have to turn around, they could cancel your visa. You take on that risk. Historically, you got the visa, and the visa is a permission to come in. So, but historically, custom officers are still supposed to inspect you. And even prior to this administration, there have been a lot of cases where people, where the officer sees, okay, you have an F-1 visa, but I don't think you're really studying, right? Based on your phone, based on a lot of things you're doing, I think you're illegally working, so I cancel your visa, right? So having a visa, being a student, is you have the ticket to come into the country, but you still are seeking admission. So every time you see the officer, you're being inspected. So they're doing their job. So if you want to play it safe, you obviously don't leave.
Why wouldn't we allow it? The question is, why do they want to come? It's crumbling here.
Oh, why do international students around the world want to come to the United States? The United States are terrible. I think both sentiments are true. And you really, that's a terrific question. The prices here, extremely high. But what you have to understand is that the United States is amazing in so many ways as well. Everything you complain about the United States, the same or equivalent can be said in many other places around the world. And there's things that is undisputably great about the United States. We have some of the best industries. We have some of the best ways to make money here. We have some of the best living standards. And so as hard as it is in many places around the world, it's just that much harder. And so, and again, you're only comparing with what you know, right? So the people who are trying to come here, they're comparing with what they know in their home country. Many places around the world, their annual salary, $5,000, $10,000. You go to the best school that is super competitive, worldwide ranking, maybe 150 or even lower, right? Not even a top 100. So the education, the experience, the connections that you get in the United States, it's still extremely remarkable. Now, it is extremely hard still for people who are living here. We know it. We're living here every single day with the violence, with the inflation, but you really have to understand the rest of the world, what they're facing.
Is USCIS waiving I751 interviews for joint cases?
They're not supposed to. They were for the past 4 years for a lot, especially if you have a good application, especially if the person you're married to have a security clearance already waived, right? So let's say you are married to a government official, right? A state worker, a city worker, a federal worker. You're working with somebody in the law enforcement. Generally speaking, they have already been vetted, so their security clearance would cover your interview, and generally it would waive that. So we've seen cases, 751, we file, and within like 2 weeks, not 2 weeks, maybe like 2 months, green card already mailed to the house, which means it got approved, and then because it takes a month to process the case, right? So extremely shocking. So that was 4 years ago. Now they're not supposed to. They're supposed to be interviewing everyone, but from what I've heard on the ground at USCIS, due to logistics, they're still waiving certain cases that they think it's just a waste of time to interview because it's so strong.
What happens if my K1 spouse has left and now making false claims of abuse? VAWA.
Oh, VAWA. So the situation is this, right? Somebody came into the country, you're supposed to get married, but you didn't get married, and now they individually file a battery application to get a green card, and they are making a false claim saying the U.S. citizen has abused them, and so they deserve a green card. What can you do as a U.S. citizen, or will the United States approve that? Just so you know, and you could, feel more at peace about this. United States government is extremely thorough with their VAWA applications, especially in this administration now. Mandatory, it has always been mandatory interview for VAWA applications. And the person really needs to prove that there was strong abuse, okay? People don't file it lightly, and then if they are filed lightly and it gets denied, USCIS officers, especially now, a lot of times they just transfer it over to ICE, and they're the top priority to get deported, right? So there's no, for good reasons, there's not a good system for you to say, please go ahead and deport them, right? Because then a lot more marriage fraud would happen where people get foreigners, come over, abuse them, and then just deport them, right? So the government does not want that. They don't want US citizens to be in a place to do a lot of this and harming the rest of the world. But if they are filing a true claim on VAWA, the United States government can still give them a green card. But again, the burden of proof is extremely high, right? They have to go through thousands of paperwork. So if it's false, they will detect it.
I am applying for H1B right now. Will this hurt my chance of H1B?
If you're talking about where this administration is going right now with trying to cancel visas and their general sentiment against H1B, I have to say yes, which is very different than what this White House was campaigning on. Because if you looked at his speeches, President Trump was supposed to be pro-students and pro-STEM workers and pro-H1B, but from what we're seeing, at least for the past 3 months, canceling visas, kicking people out, being super strict for people getting it, it might not be good. And maybe it's all in the works. Maybe they're just trying to stop the amount of people coming in, and then they're gonna grant an easier way to get a green card for people who are here. But, you know, I don't know, right? Today's success story is about a 601 waiver while having an arrest record, and how do you deal with that? So we have the entire waiver application here, and we have the request for evidence here. The case just got approved in February 2025. We filed this case in 2022. So for anybody who's unfamiliar, a waiver is essentially somebody who came into the US illegally, okay? They cross the border illegally. They need to waive their criminal act of being unlawfully present in the United States, even though, you know, they're married to a US citizen. So you want to prepare this case and prove it. And so this was the 601A. It's an application for provisional unlawful presence waiver under the immigration law. So it's a legal pathway to get a green card. Essentially, it's what the government is saying. Removing you, deporting you, kicking you out, not granting you a green card would cause extreme hardship on our own people, our own green card holders, and our own US citizens that we'd rather give it to you, right? It's a win-win situation. You have proven your case. You have justified your existence. And even though you committed a crime, we're going to waive it. We're going to grant it. It is extremely hard to get these. So we prepared, again, probably spent half a year to a year. We prepared this case. We filed it. The attorney brief is 32 pages. And in total, we submitted 48 exhibits. So easily 700-800 pages arguing why this person deserves a green card. So let's go through some of this, right? So I'll just, you know what, I'll read you the introduction. As will be shown below, the removal of Mr. Client, applicant, would cause extreme hardship to the U.S. citizen's spouse. The nature of the extreme hardship potentially faced in this case would far exceed the mere rudimentary hardship experienced as a result of the separation spouse. Should this waiver not be granted, our client, a U.S. citizen, would face one of the most painful decisions imaginable. She would have to choose between the following: accompanying her husband to said country, where her future and that of her 2 U.S. citizen children, both under the age of 11, would be severely compromised. The applicant is a daughter of immigrants who came to the United States to give her a better life. Now that this client is a mother herself, she enjoyed seeing her children thrive in the United States as a result of her parents' sacrifice. Our client's parents have both passed away after their siblings were devastated. However, her friends and family, especially her client, provided tremendous support as the grieving the loss. With the possibility of our client being deported, the legacy that this parents built for this sake would be destroyed. Our client and her 2 children are accompanying and living in the United States. If they leave, they would face poverty and dangers that her parents fled when they came to the United States. Having left everything behind, our clients created an entirely new life in the United States. Therefore, the memories, ties, and the parents, it would all be sacrificed if they have to leave. After suffering the loss of her parents, being involved in a severe accident, the most recently being diagnosed with mental illness, our client is dependent on her community, her family, and the support. And it goes on. And we talk about what the life is like in the United States. We talk about what life is like if they leave to go back to their home country. Married to a U.S. citizen, having 2 U.S. citizen children under the age of 11, building a life here, a work here. We talk about the marital and emotional hardship. We talk about the financial hardship. We talk about good moral character. We're talking about the economic severity and situation in the home country and why the discretion is warranted. So 32 pages, 48 exhibits, and we get a request for evidence. We got this request for evidence in February 2025. So let's see, we filed it in June 2022, and after about 3 years, we get this request for evidence, and it's about a criminal arrest. And this had so many up and down moments, right? There are so many up and down moments. The client didn't know this was going to be an issue. We didn't know this was going to be an issue. When we got it, we were scared to death about what was in it, and especially at this time, 2025 February. Like, they're digging really into the past to look at something. And let's look at what there was an arrest in. Hold on, let me see. There was an arrest in 2010, right? 15 years ago, they found an arrest record, and they really wanted explanations. So we prepared it, right? It was, once we found out what it was, we were a little bit more relieved, but still, because of this administration, we do not know what was gonna happen, so we still spent 2 pages explaining everything. So let's kind of go through that, right? Actually, it's too long. It's too long to kind of go through it. But when I was reading it, I had a lot of fun because the way we talked about it. This is one paragraph. I'll read this part. I think it's funny. All right. Furthermore, okay, God, this person got arrested twice. Okay, anyways, this is the part that I had fun working on. Furthermore, in October of 2011, our client was arrested due to a misdemeanor warrant for not having paid a traffic ticket. I mean, like, we should have put that right in the beginning, right? The arrest was for an unpaid traffic ticket, but the way the sentence was read, our client was arrested due to a misdemeanor warrant for not having paid a traffic ticket. He paid off his traffic ticket, and no further legal actions were taken against him. See Exhibit 4. This client's record currently has no other arrest or detentions other than what is recorded. I mean, just like, come on, right? And then the first arrest was because they were doing a drug bust, and he just so happened to be at that address. It wasn't his home, it wasn't his property, but there was other people there, and he got caught up. But the police records and everything show he was innocent. So I mean, we could have just spent 1 paragraph simply saying he wasn't there. This is a misunderstanding. He got arrested. Even though it's related drugs, he wasn't the person in question. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And the second one was an unpaid traffic ticket. Please approve this case. But we were really worried what this administration would do because, again, it is purely discretionary, right? The officer could say, you know what? We only want people with good luck. If he's there at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and he has unpaid traffic tickets, sorry, we don't want you, denied, continue, and we'll deport you. But think about that. Parent of 2 U.S. citizens, spouse of a U.S. citizen, been here for decades, contributing to the U.S., and it's just these 2 small things. But again, the client was uncertain. A lot of times, things are uncertain. So we did our best to put everything together. Here's all the exhibits we compiled for these 2 simple things, right? Sworn and notarized affidavit from the client. We got the LA Superior Court records. We got the police records, which was really hard, by the way, because it was 2010, right? We had to beg the police department to get it and find it, a copy of police records also from the other city. So 2 police records, which we finally got, that took the longest, the Superior Court records and the testimonial. And again, we resubmitted half of the things that we argued for in the waiver application. That is how difficult it is to get a green card if you came to the United States illegally. You came illegally, you came for the pursuit of a better life, you broke an immigration law, you are undocumented, you are illegal, the United States doesn't want you. But this client had to live here, get married, have kids, build a great life. show that they are of such great value that removing them would cause extreme hardship on the fabric of this family and society, that the United States warrants giving them a green card. And they have to have a squeaky clean record. Even arrest from 15 years ago, even a small unpaid traffic ticket gets scrutinized. But finally, this case is approved, and they can get a green card just to be able to start their life. And mind you, they've been paying taxes almost this entire time, right? So anyone who is saying people cross the border illegally and they get green cards so easily, they take advantage of our system, is blatantly untrue. It is so difficult to get it. And they live in such tremendous fear, and they work so hard to prove that they deserve it. With that being said, we're very happy for the family, and we definitely had a fun time working on this case. Gabby, Margaret did a fantastic job throughout this entire period, from 2021 all the way till now. And again, not quite over yet because the green card is still not in their hands, right? It's in process. So, with all of that being said, this was a happy, successful story for the waiver application. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, so that's the success story filming. We'll go back to questions.
My mom is a green card holder and depends on me financially. Will that help my waiver?
Your mom is a green card holder, and it depends on you financially. And will that help your waiver? So presumably, you are trying to get an immigration benefit, whether it's a visa or a green card, and you are applying for a waiver, and you have to prove that without you, there will be extreme hardship on others. So yes, your mom is dependent on you. She's important, and yeah, prove your financial ability. Now, I would definitely make that argument if that's what you're asking. I would not leave that out.
How long does a K1 visa take to get it?
In our experience, if you do everything correct, super good, USCIS approves it, let's say a year. You go to the interview, it's super low priority. You'll get lucky if you can get it within 5 months, 6 months. In my experience, maybe even 8 months to a year for the visa. After you get it, be able to come into the US, then get married, and then file for the green card, and that will probably take another year or so. So if you're fast from 0 to coming into the US to be able to get married, I would estimate 2 years.
I was born in the Philippines but have lived in Canada for the last 5 years. Can I make a request to have Canada recognized as my chargeability country when applying for F-2B? Parents are US residents.
Great question. To the best of my understanding, I don't think so. So the question is, you were born in one country, but you moved to another country. And for anybody who doesn't know the immigration system, what line you get to wait in and how long you have to wait depends on how many people from that country have applied for the green card. And so countries like India, Philippines, China, there's so many people who have applied that there's a long queue, there's a long line. The only time you can change which line you're in, you don't want to be in the China line, you don't want to be in the India line, you don't want to be in the Philippines line, is if you get married to somebody else and you can use your spouse's chargeability birthplace.
Someone with a GC trying to citizenship but have few misdemeanors, is there a way to citizenship?
A green card holder who wants to be a citizen, they're being evaluated on their good moral character. They have a few misdemeanors. Does the misdemeanors prevent them from getting citizenship? Do the misdemeanors cause them to get denied from, what are the chances of the misdemeanors causing them to get denied for the citizenship? And worse yet, can the misdemeanor get them deported and get their green card canceled? It obviously depends on the misdemeanor. What you want to research and do ChatGPT and research a lot is crime-immigration, right? Crime and immigration. It's a very specialized field of expertise. You want to analyze your specific misdemeanor, and does that fit the immigration definition of crime of moral turpitude or anything that's deportable, inadmissible, and if it is not, can you make a good argument with other supporting documents to show that you are a good person, unrelated to the misdemeanor, right? You've been reformed, you are good, and you take all this application and you try to convince the citizenship officer at your naturalization interview to say you are a good person and have them make the decision. So nothing is set in stone. It is not science, other than if you're, but I mean, the reason why it's an issue is because it's a misdemeanor. If it's a felony, it's more likely that just, nope, you can't get it, right? Because, you know, but if it's a misdemeanor, it could be argued both ways, but you definitely want to look at the case, you want to make the argument, and hopefully you can get a case approved.
I was deported before. Am I still eligible for a 601 waiver?
You were deported before. Are you eligible for a 601? Generally, no. It is much more difficult. You're out of the country, but there's no harm trying. So you can always research and say, okay, yes, I still want to do it, right? Maybe a different, it takes like 4 years to process 601 anyways. So you might be in a new state, but generally speaking, right, if you have a permanent bar, it's much more difficult, if not impossible, to get these approved.
What year is USCIS working on for I-130? I filed for my spouse who is in India in January 2025.
Oh, you just filed the I-130 for, okay. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a visa bulletin port. So all you have to do is just search visa bulletin for India, and ChatGPT, DeepSeek will just immediately pump it out for you.
What kind of evidence do I need to prove extreme hardship?
Great question. It's a factor test, which is not an element test, meaning you don't have to meet these things in order to get it. It's a factor. They look at a lot of factors. So there's a lot of factors in a particular relationship. Before I go into the factors, just think of the idea that you want to prepare a case that reads like a story that will make the officer cry, that makes them want to go back to tell their spouse at night, hey, look at this particular love story. It is so interesting. So try to make your story as close to that as possible. How? Think any K-drama, think any novel that you read that really touched you, right? Notebook, for example. Talk about your love story. Talk about the mental anguish. Talk about the medical circumstance. Talk about the financial. Talk about your dreams. Talk about your hopes. Talk about the devastations. Talk about each individual's past. Can you craft your character, your story, and the people in your life, your parents, your uncle, your children, your pet even, right? Can you fashion a story that removing the said individual would cause such an extreme hardship that they want to be able to grant this green card? So these officers are people too. They're not just AI algorithms. So at least not yet. So do your best to craft that story. And of course, you have unlimited time and you have unlimited paper to prepare this story. So do your absolute best, right? If you're from Mexico or India or China or Europe, if this doesn't work, what is the alternative? That plays into your story as well, right? So, yeah. Thank you all for tuning into today's show. We try to do this every Thursday. We're gonna do it next week. And then I think we're gonna go to Ayla pretty soon, so we'll miss at least a week or so. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll release this video on YouTube next week. Take care, bye-bye.